Hello, hello! This is Cookie Externalities. It's a game developed for a microeconomics class just to teach a few concepts, mostly surrounding externalities in a free competitive market. We tell the students we're going to play a game. We project what you see on the right here onto the screen in front of the class, and then the left is what students would see once they get out their phone. We also tell them that the winner of this game, the top three actually, will get real cookies in real life for winning. So we have a student enter their name, and it shows up. It's kind of like Kahoot on the server. And once everybody's in, we start. And at the start, it's just cookie clicker. Whoever clicks the fastest, has the most cookies, gets the most points. It's kind of a competitive version of cookie clicker. At one point, if we want to introduce scarcity, we can pause the game and let everybody know that when they see a purple cookie, the purple cookie signifies that there's a cookie, I'll go ahead and play it, a cookie that has a limited amount of, it's scarce, there's a limited amount of cookies. Now every time you click, you get 10 cookies, so definitely worth clicking. But if I click on these other users' accounts, you'll see that the number goes down for everybody. And so you have to try to click these as quickly as possible. Once people have gotten into the groove of clicking and trying their hardest to be number one, it'll show the top 5 if there are more than 5 concurrent players. It'll show the top 5 on the screen here, but everybody will see their rank in the top right corner. Once people have gotten used to this idea, we pause the game and let them know that society has advanced. There's new technology. And in this second phase, there are actually producers, things that you can buy that will make cookies for you. Now, most people will get excited and start buying these producers right away. But once we start playing for a few minutes, especially if you kind of seed it and let them know that maybe some producers are better than others, people will start to figure out that if you just look at how many cookies per second each one of these makes, the factories are by far the most cost effective. They make 5 cookies per second, and they just don't cost nearly as much as 5 times the aromator or 5/2 times the cookie press, for example. So students will start selling off and making sure that they buy factories. Now this is when we inform the students, after a few minutes of this, that it turns out factories are bad for the environment, right? In economics, this is what we would call a negative externality. And so right now, the total pollution is at 40%. What that means is 40% of the town's air is unbreathable, or something like that. We tell the students that if this pollution number reaches 100%, everybody dies and nobody gets real-life cookies. Of course, people don't die in real life. It's just the simulation will end at that point. If we can get it down to 0%, then we're good and the simulation will end. Now the question, of course, is how do you get it down to 0%? And it turns out some research has been done. If you buy these aromators, right? It's called an aromator because it makes the aroma of the town nicer. Every aromator will slow down the total amount of kind of problem that the factories cause, right? So even though the factories are the best, the aromators are the things that will actually make the situation better, right? And in this metaphor, it's kind of like reducing climate change, right? Now, it turns out right now, aromators just aren't doing well enough to overpower factories. And in fact, the smart students will notice, the clever students, the ones paying attention, will notice that it doesn't actually matter if they sell off their factories. Everyone individually should buy factories, because otherwise they'll be beaten by the ones who didn't sell off their factories, by the ones who have kept going with the thing that's bad for the environment, but good for the individual. And so in fact, during this phase of the experiment, we find that students actually keep buying factories, even though they know that the pollution level keeps rising. So, after a few minutes of this, we pause the game again, and we let students know that the government has just instituted a tax and a subsidy. The tax is on factories. They used to produce 5 cookies a second, but now for every 5 cookies they produce, the government will take 3 of them. Aromators, on the other hand, have a subsidy. For every cookie that they used to produce, the government will give you another one for free, right? So this mimics a real Pigovian tax and a real subsidy that you might see in a free market. Well, in a slightly less free market now that the government has started to regulate it. Now, of course, the clever student, knowing that the factories are much more expensive than the aromators, will start selling off factories and buying aromators. And with this, we see that the total amount of pollution in the game has started to go down. And now we just let the students know that, again, when the pollution level reaches 0, that's when we're actually completely ready to stop the simulation, and whoever is in first place will get the most cookies. At this point, I also have some controls just in case I need to make this go a little bit faster. It's starting to wind down, and I've gotten the message across. And eventually, the game will end all by itself. And once that happens, we can tabulate the final scores. That's really just waiting for all the packets to come in from everybody's phone, and we have the final results. When I did this with my actual microeconomics class, when I first made this project for a presentation, the teacher was actually one of the winners, but she very graciously gave her cookies to the 4th place player, because I had only given them to the top 3. So that's cookie externalities. It's meant to teach some economics concepts by engaging students in this kind of fun economics game simulation. And it's multiplayer, right? Students have to develop strategies, maybe by talking to one another, or just kind of figuring out how the game works with respect to each other, so that they can really understand how these things are playing out in the real world, right? How are externalities actually affecting real economic actors' decision-making in the real-world economy?